This is a time where we are going to have to look at every executive legal authority available in the governor's mansion, and I've already had multiple conversations with lawyers about this, to find every way possible to block the dehumanization and unconstitutional invasion of the rights of people based on ethnicity, including those in the immigrant community. As I mentioned before, I was out at Dulles and was deeply inspired by the lawyers there, and it was a crazy night, because I was there when the TRO came down and made it look like the courts had won, and that everyone had a chance to see a lawyer. And there were tears in the eyes of these lawyers, and then the customs official simply said, nope, we don't care, you're not getting in here. So we have a situation where we need to get very quickly on top of this question about how we enforce the rule of law. I think that the issue of people having licenses and coming out of the shadows and other things are very important. We've gone out of our way to make sure we're doing events with Dreamers as well as DAPA families in order to make sure that we are showing that people have their back. We've been talking to universities, hospitals, and free clinics about how we make sure, first of all, that people's rights are protected, even the undocumented, but also that there is good information. We've had roundtables with public school teachers who say that they've seen students simply stop showing up at school because families are so terrified that the families are going to be ripped away. So we need to look at all the legal authorities we can to ensure those protections. We need to look at all of the ways in which we also can educate people about the rights that already exist. We need to make sure, and we've been doing this in our campaign, that we send people to donate to local charities that are working with vulnerable communities, and then we call this out for what it is, which is racism and bigotry. I will say that for some of the reasons I mentioned, this is an interesting situation for someone who grew up thinking the states' rights argument was always the dog whistle from the right about blocking progressive federal legislation. And so one of the things we are looking at is how do we make sure that we maximize those protections for vulnerable communities without creating precedents that the other side can use in these other directions. And I think when it comes to the anti-commandeering jurisprudence and other things, there is a lot of room for us to make sure people are protected in these communities. I think it also goes back to something else that is a deep passion of mine that I think is an intersection of some of these issues, which is that we see in Virginia, as I said, this great progressive tradition, but then we have some of these reactionary legacy issues. And a number of them revolve around what I would call the criminalization of poverty itself and the need for criminal justice reform. And this tends to disproportionately hit those who may have be on green card status or other issues or living on the margins. We've seen in Virginia, for example, the ability to suspend a license if you have one. The garnishing of wages and other issues are some of the most progressive in the country. In Virginia, the limit for what constitutes a felony is only $200 of value being stolen, the lowest in the country, to put you in to a potential felony charge. Then once you get that charge, the cap on indigent legal defense is $375 for the entire case, for the entire count. I'm guessing there's some people in this room who bill out a lot more than that for an hour of time. What that means is people are getting charged with things that almost immediately put you in a felony department. You're almost certainly getting pushed to plea down to something less. And if you or members of your family may be from immigrant communities, that's going to have a disproportionate effect. These are things that end up costing the state a ton of money. So I want to look at the intersection of these as well. And again, I think there's some opportunities to build some new alliances. Some of those red counties that used to be very much for as much mandatory minimum as you could possibly imagine have seen that not be a healthy thing in their communities, particularly with the explosion of the opioid epidemic, but even before that. And I think there's some opportunities to look for common sense solutions on some of these issues.